What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, well, look at this. We have two screens. We usually have three, and I think it's certainly, you're not your screen on YouTube or whatever you're watching. It's not being distorted. No. Ralph is actually with Fede right now in Paraguay. Ralph is enjoying his vacations over there in the country, obviously taking advantage of the summer break here in America, taking advantage of everything that's going on there. But yeah, it's so cool to see you guys together and to obviously record because obviously we have a lot to talk about. We haven't been on it in quite some time. Obviously, we've had the Club World Cup occur where unfortunately no Paraguayan will be a champion this year. We obviously have the Clausura that just started last week, and we'll talk about our thoughts there. We had some transfers that actually had been official as of last week as well. So we're going to talk about that in a second. Obviously, we have the Copa Sudamericana is back for Guarani. They can see what they can do against Universidad de Chile. And yeah, a lot going on already in this sort of midway point of July. Hard to believe we're already at the midpoint of July. Obviously, so many games are coming up thick and fast. The European season's about to start soon, which is crazy to think that's about to end on Sunday and then it's going to start again. Obviously, we'll talk about that as well in the future. But yeah, let's go to my co-hosts who are together in the country. I guess we'll talk about the guy who is not supposed to be there all the time, but Ralph, welcome to Paraguay. It's good to see you with Fede. How's the country been treating you so far?
Yeah, it's good to be here. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Fede, right next to me. Thanks for inviting me to your house, to the studio, right, to do this live direct from Asuncion. I'm having a good time meeting a lot of old friends and catching up with family, all that kind of stuff. Even went to a game at the weekend, but not a top level Clausura game. But I was watching one of the regional leagues, which is the UFI, the Unión Fútbol del Interior, which is very fun. You get like full crowds, a lot of people, even though it's essentially amateur football, that was a cool experience. And yeah, I'm having a great time here. Looking forward to get into it right from the heart of South America in Asuncion.
Right from the heart of South America, where Fed is obviously based, and actually a really good chat discussion that you just had, Ralph, because you had the chance to obviously go and watch sort of basically non-professional, non-league football, and we were just talking about this before we got on the air, how like you look at some of the games that we have in the Clausura, and you think to yourself, those type of games, Fede, that Ralph went to, where it's more about the love for the game, maybe some money here and there, but obviously not compared to the salaries that these players are making in the first division, and they're not getting any crowds. Whereas over there, they're getting so much. I mean, that just shows how kind of divided in a way that Paraguay is with football. Sometimes, of course.
That's a very interesting thing you're talking about, Roberto, because it is a reality here in Paraguay. You see a lot more people probably in the countryside in those games in the weekend than in first division. It maybe has to do with, how much you have to pay to go and watch a first division match. You have to travel and everything. Some people like to just get out of their house and go watch a football game real close to them, and they feel that closeness to their teams. Maybe it has to do with that. Maybe it has to do with our first division right now. There's not many stars, to be honest. You look at the list of players that came to Paraguay. The players that are new that were hired these last couple of months, and really there's not two three names that really catch your attention that you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna go and watch Cerro Olimpia because they brought this player. That's an honest answer to also. So I think that draws people to the stands right now. And Olimpia, Cerro, they haven't done well. That's also an issue after these first 6 months. So they had to catch up. They have to put the fans by their sides, and it's gonna be nice to see that if Olimpia and Cerro can really make a run in this clausura and try to do something. But first of all, it's great having Ralph here at home. I still can't believe it. I'm watching the screen and it feels kind of weird. It's the first time I have somebody over here to do a podcast, so it's gonna be a nice experience here with Ralph, sharing this episode. You guys are like family to me. We've been sharing so many years now. We've been friends. We've been talking about so much about our life besides football also. So I feel really close to you guys. So it's great having Ralph here for the first time at home.
No, it's fantastic. It's really amazing to see. And, obviously, hopefully that we can do this more often. And that would mean me coming to Paraguay or Ralph going back to Paraguay as well. Or, hey, maybe you come to America, Fed. That's always
For sure.
the out of the discussion, especially with this World Cup coming up. So I think that just opens up the doors for so many people. But Let's talk about what we saw so far this weekend, because obviously the Clausura is back. It is back. It was back last weekend, actually, on 4th of July, with the first game of Trinidad beating Deportivo Recoleta 4-2. The big teams actually had some interesting results, to say the least. We'll talk about Guarani firstly, because they got the 3-1 win against Jose Mayo. Cerro Porteño, a team that really was needed to straighten their team, especially heading into, obviously, the Copa Libertadores round of 16 that they got against Estudiantes de La Plata very soon. They got the 3-1 win against General Caballero. Libertad also in that position. They got to play River Plate. They lost 1-0 to Sportivo Luqueño at home, which is, not the typical result that you see, given that Libertad are very strong at home. And then Olimpia tying Nacional 1-1 of the Defensores. So, Fede, I'll go to you first. Really some interesting results, to say the least. I mean, right now, obviously, we're so early into the season that, the fact that Trinidense are top just on goal difference shows that this league is, it's going to take some time to get accustomed to it. But, I think the impressions there, for me at least, was Cedro getting the win, Iturbe having a fantastic game against General Caballero, getting the result that they needed. We obviously saw the likes of, obviously, Blas Riveros come back to the country. He got his performance in. Obviously, Fabrizio Peralta leaving Brazil. He's back as well. We got some, obviously, Luis Amarilla also there, the new number 9 for Cerro Porteño. So, in reality, it's a result that I think, given what they've done in this sort of transfer window, it was expected for them to get this win. And I think that is their full ambition, to really go and win this Clausura, because it's going to be now almost 4 years to the day that they last won it. So at least on one part, they are obviously trying to, compete on all fronts for the Libertadores that comes up very soon. But they got to know that they got to win something this year. Like, they also got Copa Paraguay coming up soon, and they understand, like, sort of the players that they've got and some of the, the deadwood that they got rid of, that they will, of course, try to compete on all fronts. And that's ultimately the goal for them.
People are so tired of seeing Cerro Porteño in that second spot, especially obviously their fans, and they're being taunted all the time because of this situation. You hear it out there on the streets. You guys are always second. You guys are never champions. Or when are you ever gonna win it? And they're always trying to do it. They're always bringing in good players. I was just listening to the list of players that you mentioned, and there's a lot of quality there. It's just a matter of who's going to end up playing. You have a lot of midfielders now in this squad, and I don't know really Diego Martinez where his head is in the sense of what his starting 11 is. I mean, he's always mixing it up. He's always changing players. He barely repeats his starting 11. So that's my thing with him. But I believe the players are hungry. That's what I saw in this first game, and especially in that first half hour. I mean, they really wanted to go at whoever was in front of them, and I think that's gonna be the mindset in this Clausura. They're gonna try to be champions, just stomping on everybody, and it's gonna be one of those tournaments where I believe they're gonna try to do that against the small clubs also. But they're gonna have to win the big games, which has been the issue for this Cerro Porteño, winning the Super Clásicos, beating Libertad. Those are gonna be the games where I think it's all gonna be decided. But it's good to see Cecilio healthy. It's good to see Juan Iturbe healthy, especially. We're almost a month away from that game against Estudiantes. So it looks like everything is headed towards the right direction, especially when you start winning and you score so many goals. I'm really happy from what I saw from Cerro Porteño. I'm concerned from what I saw from Libertad. Happy from what I saw from Luqueño. Hopefully they can do something in this Clausura. And I'm really worried about Olimpia. Guarani is another team that's also starting from scratch after leaving Chiqui Arce, after letting go of Chiqui Arce, actually, because he was kind of fired. He wanted more money. He wanted better players. And Guarani went in a totally different direction with younger players, with a young, cheaper coach, I would even say, like Victor Bernay. So it's going to be nice to see how this Clausura develops as the games go by. But as of right now, it's good to see Cerro Porteño win, Ralph, because this is one of the teams that you want to see up there fighting for the title. And we'll see if this Luqueño that kind of shook up the situation there in Libertad. Maybe this wakes up Libertad in the second half of the year. They have River also ahead of them in Libertadores, so they got to get ready for that tremendous challenge they got.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think the three teams that are still in competition, right? Cerro Porteño, Libertad, and Guarani, the teams that maybe are going to start looking at those international games and not focusing as much on the Clausura when we start getting in there. With Guarani, I thought a point was really interesting that Fede made about a young team, and Bernay is known for that, for bringing through the younger players. But in the end, it was the veteran, right? Willy Mendieta, that came off the bench and made the difference with those goals in the second half against Dos de Mayo. And so we're seeing, I think, the importance of some of those key players in key positions, just like we mentioned Cerro. When you have Iturbe fit and scoring goals, the same as Cecilio Dominguez, there's such a different team. You mentioned as well, Roberto, Blas Riveros. Blas Riveros is such a good player when he plays, but he's had such a bad history of injuries. I was looking the other day, I don't think he's ever really managed more than like 20, 25 games in a season. So we have to see if these players can really keep that up, and we can see some of the start here. Luqueño, I'm very excited by with Cáceres coming back as coach, and you look at their bench as well. There's a lot of very good players there, right? That were on the bench. You know, your Federico Santander, a lot of experience.
Sergio Diaz, they brought Sergio Diaz.
Diaz has come back, right? So there's a lot to work with, I think, for Luqueño, and they could become one of those disruptive teams that start making it difficult for the bigger sides as they try and pick up points. We've seen that before with people like Trinidad and Dos de Mayo a couple of seasons ago, when they were doing well to pick off points against some of the bigger teams. And lastly, for Olimpia, I think we talked a lot about coaches, and Olimpia is a team that you feel has maybe a very good team, but Bustos as coach still has not shown us that he's the right man to lead this team. And now they do have a very good set of players. Sebastian Ferreira scoring, right? For example, he's been a player that's so important, and can be such a kind of focal point for them up front, where they've had so many failures for the last, well, even the season they won the championship, it wasn't because they were scoring goals, it's because they're very good defensively. So they have some of the ingredients there, but I don't know if they have the right coach to really make the difference. So it's going to be exciting as we look at it, because there's these questions that need to be answered, and there's this idea of consistency and who really can stay consistent for those 22 games.
So looking at the teams, I mean, I guess like which one are you really keeping your eye out for? You know, I'll go to Ralph on this one because, you know, I feel like there's so many storylines to go to, but who would really be the one that is fully on pressure mode? Because you have a Libertad side that obviously, you know, coming as reigning champions. You have a Cedro side that maybe, you know, obviously are focusing on all levels to win something. And then you have Olimpia, who obviously always have the expectations of winning. So out of the three, I guess we could say, unless you want to put another one, who are you really keeping your eye out to see what they can do in the season or the remaining part of the year?
I think I'll be looking mostly at Cerro, because the pressure's on them. I mean, Libertad are already qualified for the Libertadores, right? And so they have this Clausura as almost like a free play for them to see what they want to do, and they can focus on their Libertadores games. But I think for Cerro, there's a lot of pressure. Like you said, it's been a long time since they won a title. Olimpia, they have pressure in the sense that they should be winning, but they do have the title from a year ago that they can still kind of almost lean on, and they also know that the Copa Paraguay, they could probably make a good run. So I think for Cerro, there's a big pressure on them, especially if they don't get past the Estudiantes de La Plata, and that dream ends. And if we're honest with what's just been happening in the Club World Cup, it's going to be really hard for a non-Brazilian team to now win the Copa Libertadores, because the Brazilian sides are coming back with their money, like money bags full, right? So they're going to be able to make big signings. They're going to be able to improve conditions. So it's going to be really hard to look at the Libertadores. So for Cerro, I think the focus has to be on the Clausura.
As for me, I think it's Olympia because you know they're one of the teams that hired the most amount of players. It's incredible to see the kind of players they also brought. You know, quality from the local league. I'm talking about Giovanni Bogado, who already started in this first game. They brought a lot of defense. The defenders also. Capasso is back. You know, this is somebody that the fans wanted to see at the beginning of the year. He's coming out. He's coming back now because they didn't find that right defense in the first half of this 2025. So they're trying to get a new team together, you know, and they're bringing in new stars also. I'm talking about Alcaraz, who's a very exciting forward there with Sebastian Ferreira, who's coming back to his to his house. He's coming back to the Paraguayan football after being in MLS and playing lately also in Argentina. You feel like he's back to his place and probably in his best shape. You look how old he is right now, and he could probably be that top scorer that Olympia really needs in a tournament like this. So I'm looking into Olympia, but I have my doubts, just like Ralph was mentioning. I don't know about this coach. I mean, 6 games without winning. You didn't end the apertura the best way, and you did not start it the second half of the year. You lost a friendly really bad against Racing 4-1, and then you show a lot of doubts in your first game of the Clausura, and then you have this back and forth with the press. I don't like what he's showing so far, Fabian Bustos, and he has to show himself here in Paraguay. People don't respect him here. He has done things in Chile, he has done things in other countries, but here in Paraguay, nobody knows him. He has to make a name for himself, and he needs to make out of this Olympia winning team, right now. They're not that team. They're really far from that situation, and they have a lot of players that really need to pick it up. Derlis Gonzalez is not available in these first games. Rich Ortiz, who's the captain of this team, is the first one that everybody is pointing at. They want him out of the team. So there's a lot of issues that Fabian Bustos really needs to get his stuff on. And out of the surprises, maybe it's always Guarani and Luqueño, and Luqueño has brought so many players that I'm really looking into what Luqueño can do. I think that Julio Cáceres wants to build that championship mentality also in that locker room. That's why I think he brought competition even in certain spots. I mean, Sergio Diaz, like I was just mentioning, maybe we're not going to see him in these first games because he's coming off the European football, but this is a player that also wants to stand out. This is a player that he had his opportunity in Real Madrid, couldn't make it. He had an opportunity in big teams in Brazil, couldn't make it there either. He has to come back to Paraguay and bounce back somehow. He's still very young, and I think Federico Santander can also chip in a lot of things. I like what the midfield is doing. They brought in a lot of experienced players that have already won it. So maybe Luqueño, after this good result in the first week, maybe they can do something. But Guarani was definitely one of the teams that really caught my attention during the first couple of months. So this is also a team that I'm going to follow. But I'm putting my eyes on Olimpia and Luqueño, to be honest with you guys. After what I saw in these first games, I think these two teams could eventually surprise.
Yeah, I think there's so many good candidates that you could say, but I think I'm going to go on Ralph here and go for Cedro just because of the fact that they haven't won anything ever since 2021. So, and given that they are the second biggest team, that always puts pressure on them. The fact that they've had this drought, I think, is going to be interesting to see how they handle the rest of the year because, they are playing in 3 competitions and they gotta win something, Then it's going to be insane to think that if it doesn't go well, then they'll go 5 years without winning, which, that's an incredible drought that, in a league that typically you get sort of the same winners all the time. It's something that is, I think, unacceptable on that end. But we'll see, we're obviously heading into an interesting clausura. We obviously have also the Copa Sudamericana. We'll go to Guarani in a second because they have obviously Universidad de Chile hosting them at the they'll be hosting them in Santiago before the return leg in the Defensores. I mean, Fede, it's an interesting one because obviously Guarani, they're going through so many different things at the minute, and you think to yourself, now that they're with Bernay and all that, and you would think that okay, maybe the momentum has kind of shifted. I mean, if I'm a Guarani fan, am I concerned about what's heading into this game? Because I feel like maybe that momentum that you got at the beginning was there, and now that you changed this coach, a new idea, maybe there's something that could be putting them in a disadvantage.
No, I think for Guarani fans and for Guarani itself, I mean, I think they should just enjoy this year. I mean, they have so many young players. I think it's an opportunity for most of them to show themselves out there. I mean, look at Vargas. He had a good Libertadores and a good Sudamericana, and Olimpia picked him up. A big team, and he took a step further. I'm talking about a guy that was playing in second division a couple years ago before Chiqui Arce said, "Oh no, I want this player. Bring him back. I'm eventually going to put him in defense," and he eventually was one of the stars in that defense, even scoring a couple of goals against Independiente, which was probably his biggest highlight of those first 6 months of the year. But Cantero was another one. He went to Olimpia also. So some of these players have been able to make a big move, and I love what I see between Ferfer and Willie Mendieta. If they're healthy, if they're out there, you know something magical is gonna happen. The goal that the other day Ferfer scored, I mean, you can see that he's feeling it out there. I mean, he's doing so much for this team, and he loves this club. He plays with such passion, and he has it's Batman and Robin out there. To be honest with you guys, you see them, and they're always looking for each other. They are the best two players. They have the experience, so they're gonna carry this team, I believe. Even in this kind of series, I think if they're gonna show up, I think Guarani can do something in Sudamericana. Still rough, huh?
Yeah, I think that's the exciting thing about Furfer and Mendieta, that have the experience and have done it before. I mean, even in the case of Fernandez, he's done it with Guarani, those amazing wins in Brazil against Corinthians, for example. So they have the experience, but then we have the exciting young players. And I thought someone like Cesar Mino had a great game at the weekend. He's involved in the goals in terms of the build up to get there. He actually provides the assist for the last goal. And he's a player that made his debut at 15. He's been one of those players that's been around for so long now, it seems, because he's obviously not been able to move being that young. But he's finally starting to develop and showing some of that maturity, I think, where he can become a key part of this team in the big stage as well. So I think with those three kind of all acting together, you could see something a bit exciting, and maybe they do have enough for the Sudamericana, at least for this round against Chilean opposition. When they move on to some of the bigger sides, maybe the Brazilians, the Argentinians, it might be a different story. But so far, I think they've shown that in these one-off situations, they might be able to make a good game for themselves and provide that quality with the experience that they have.
It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be an interesting tie, and I think, ultimately you don't want to count them out because I feel like in these ties, especially against like, your Chilean opposition, maybe there is that sort of factor going in. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting tie, and I'm really looking forward to it. And obviously we obviously have the big games in the Libertadores coming up soon as well. We'll talk about that when it comes, but let's talk about some transfers because we obviously had some Paraguayans making some moves, official actually. We will talk about three of them. The first one that we'll get to is I think the one that I think was highly anticipated for quite some time is Diego León. Diego León officially joining Manchester United. He was officially announced the other day. He's already been training over there at Carrington, the main training grounds at Manchester United. Obviously, it looks like he's going to be part of the preseason squad that will come to the United States actually in a few weeks. They got some friendlies there, and then yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, Ralph, I mean, this is really an interesting sort of experience for him because, obviously, aside of him being the first ever Paraguayan to play for Manchester United, I think we have to understand that, he's still 18. He's still so young. And I think realistically, I don't think unless he has a big impression, and he said before he traveled to the country that, after a few games in preseason where he feels like he's gonna kill and he's gonna give it all, that he's gonna be around the first team squad after one or two games. I like the ambition. I think I respect it and I hope that he does, but it's gonna be a really tough ask for him to do such a thing. But hey, you never know. Maybe with Manchester United in the way that they've been kind of dealing with so many different players and kind of this inconsistency that maybe Leon gets a chance earlier than ever. But I think realistically, and he said that the club did say that, he was going to work around with the academy team, the U21s, and then the first team. So he has that experience of working with different levels that he's not being thrown straight away into the first team as a starter or sub or whatever, that they're going to assess him and then see like, okay, maybe he is ready for this sort of position at Manchester United, or maybe he needs to work a bit more before getting that opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. I think his declarations are very clear, but he's always been a very confident player. We saw that basically he made his debut as a left back and scored. I mean, he's a person that's never been afraid, and I think that's one of his strengths. The other is physically he's already there. I mean, I think whether it's natural, whether he's worked on it, he's at that kind of level where Manchester United didn't have a problem taking him straight from Paraguay to the Premier League. They didn't feel like maybe he needed time in Argentina, Brazil before making the leap, which we've seen more recently, I think, in the history of players going to the Premier League. There's been a lot of that. I think the preseason tour that you mentioned is going to be key, right? That's probably going to be the time when the coaching staff look at him and think, okay, is this guy really ready for first team, or is it time for him to drop down? from what we've seen with other 18-year-olds going, like in the case of Enzo Gonzalez, he's hasn't really played feature footballs. Obviously, he's been injured, but I mean, when he first moved, the idea wasn't to throw him into the first team. It was the same with Brian Ojeda, if you remember when he first went. He went very young as well to Nottingham Forest. So I get the feeling that I think the reality is not what Diego León is saying is what's going to happen. But I think that's also not a criticism of him. I think that his confidence has been what's got him so far to here. So I think hopefully he keeps that up. He gives the best of him, and we'll see where it takes him.
Yeah, I get what Ralph is saying. I mean, we saw it with Enzo Gonzalez, we saw it with Enciso also. I mean, as soon as they got to Europe, as soon as they got there, they, the coaches said these guys are not ready yet. They need to go and play a bit in the youth leagues, and eventually we'll bring them to the first team. I don't know if they're gonna do the same thing with Diego León, right? Because you're bringing him in a spot that I think you need a player. I was kind of looking at the roster, and yeah, you have a starter there, Shaw, that he's been there for I don't know 20 years or something like that in Manchester United, and then I think they have an African there, right? An African player,
Patrick Dorgu's over there. You have obviously Harry Amas.
19, right?
Yeah, no, he's a young player as well. But again,
Yeah.
they're not really stacked at that position in comparison to look at what Enzo went to or Julio and Gomez I mentioned, which again, he obviously was a consistent player, but obviously he will obviously have the opportunity to move up. Like they all had to work in like U21s and U23s and all that. So yeah, I think for Leon's case, it's going to be interesting to see if he gets this sort of consistency at all. But it's not going to be fast like that, Fede.
I like that he's taking on this challenge as because I think that's what the mentality you need in a big team. And when you go to Real Madrid, you go to Manchester United, you need to be that winning player. You need to be that player that wants to take over, that wants to win the role. And I don't know if that's gonna be something that the coach is gonna like, but I think that's kind of the mindset you need, especially going into a preseason where you need to show your stuff. I mean, Diego León is gonna be looking all the time if the coach is watching him in these first practices, if he's seeing everything that he's doing, and hopefully he's putting in that extra effort to convince them that he needs to stay and he needs to have an opportunity right away. Hopefully in this preseason, I think we're gonna see him in a couple of games, especially because of what you mentioned. They're gonna go to the U.S. They're gonna play there a couple of friendlies. I think we're gonna see him hopefully have a couple of minutes, and I hope that he makes the best of that. He was one of those players, Roberto, and this is something that I talk about always here with people that saw him when he was very young. He was one of those guys that when you saw him there in the under 15 and the under 13s, you're always thinking, is that guy really his age? Because he's huge, physically he makes the difference, and he would make the difference in the games also. In those first games in first division, he was just going through everybody, and he was doing the same thing in the youth leagues. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in the European level because, in these last games that we saw from him in Paraguay, he was already being kind of held back. He was having difficulties, and he was going back and forth with the fans also, and that was kind of weird to me. I think him leaving Paraguay is going to be the best thing. He's still very young. Hopefully, there are a couple of South Americans in that locker room that take him on their wings and really take care of him. And I think that's going to be key also for these first couple of games, these first couple of months, and we want to see Leon, the first Paraguayan in Manchester United. There's a big fan base here in Paraguay of Manchester United fans. I don't know if it's as big as the Arsenal, but I know there's a huge community here that are going to be following their games, and hopefully we see a lot of him in this Premier League coming up.
Yeah, no, obviously, I think it's going to be interesting because I feel like even for his sake, I think it's a learning experience, Ralph. I think it really is just a learning experience for him. Like, if he goes well and impresses, then great, but it's not going to be like that in an instant, unless, like, again, this isn't a player that has shied away from any confidence and obviously making the move at such a young age, clearly surprised us. But hey, maybe something's possible. You never know. That's wishing on Man United's downfall, though. That's the thing. They have to be in a really bad spot. I personally think if Diego Leon is getting the opportunity to do it, that's no shade at him, but it's just the reality of the players that are ahead of him and have the experience playing in Europe and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think this is a test of his resiliency. So when he doesn't get those opportunities, or assuming he doesn't get those opportunities, how does he react, right? Does he start phoning up his agent and saying, I want to move back to Paraguay, back to South America? Or does he say, I'm gonna work for this, I'm gonna see through my contract. I often look at players, the people like Celso Ortiz is now a very older player, but if you look at that guy, he went very young to Holland, to Netherlands, and he stayed at AZ Alkmaar for years and years, working, and built himself a career. And then, of course, he's ended up with, he had bigger moves in places like Monterrey, and where he was actually being more played more often. Or you look at Edgar Barreto, who did that as well in Italy. I mean, there's definitely a reward for that patience, and it's whether I think he will have that or not, because we've just talked about what kind of character he is, but we've never seen him when he doesn't burst onto the scene, because that's just what he did. Like Fede was saying, at every single level, even in Primera, he was always able to be that kind of star. So now is the moment to see how he reacts to these new conditions.
And someone else that is going to be getting some new conditions is Ramón Sosa. Ramón Sosa officially made his move to Palmeiras. That's one of the other transfers that happened yesterday, I believe, was officially confirmed. And, kind of bittersweet, Fede, the fact that he couldn't finish it off in England after just 1 year. He didn't get those many opportunities, and a good Nottingham Forest side, I had to admit, that obviously qualified for Europe. But I felt like looking at the minutes that he's got, he hasn't been getting it. And, even when he was playing for the national team, you can even see sometimes that maybe he wasn't on form. So, yeah, it sucks that, he is going back to South America, but at least he's going into a powerhouse, maybe one of the bigger powerhouses in all of the continent, in Palmeiras, who just came off of quarterfinal finish in the Club World Cup, and obviously are competing on all fronts. So, and of course, for the money that they're paying, it's like what, 13 million or something like that. So this is the expectation that for him, he's going to be the star, because obviously Estabal just left, and they obviously are surrounded by really good players who maybe will be leaving after this sort of transfer window heading into the European summer. So for Ramon's case, I think it's a good move for him. It sucks that he's not staying in Europe, especially at his age now that he turns, I think, 26 next month. So you really are kind of at this point where I don't know if he's going to get another big move like this, even if he does impress. So I think this is the case where he can be consistent enough for Palmeiras, similar to what Gustavo Gomez did, and look at that, how that changed him. So I think that's the expectation for Ramon as well, but kind of bittersweet that he can stay in Europe.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things into consideration when you think about what his situation is. I mean, you have the World Cup coming. You have the situation that he's fighting for a spot. He's fighting for minutes in the national team. He wants to be part of the national team, but wants to have more minutes. He wants to be more important in this team. I think that's how the way he feels, that the minutes that he's been given, he hasn't given his best, because in his club he's not playing. So he feels that he needs that continuity. He needs to play more, and I think he's gonna get that in Palmeiras, especially because you have Gustavo Gomez there, and he's gonna really take care of him. He's gonna show him his way, and I think that's gonna be vital, because Ramon Sosa is one of those guys that's always smiling. He's always bringing his character into practices. We saw that a lot in Talleres in Argentina. He was very active on social media. I don't know if he was himself over there in Nottingham Forest. I thought that he was trying to be way too professional and try to convince the coach to have minutes, and they had a really good season. So there wasn't that much space for him there, and he needs to play. So if I was making a list, obviously this is not the best scenario. The best thing would have been for him to stay in Europe and play more over there. His story there was very short, the way that I would have liked to see it. But if I would have made a list of 5, 6 teams that I would have wanted to see him here in South America, probably Palmeiras was top 5, because Palmeiras is a huge team. They're coming off a tremendous or really good Club World Cup, and they're always a very solid team. They're always attacking. They're always bringing in really good players from the academy. So he's always going to have competition, and I think we're going to see Ramon Sosa smile again. I think we're going to see him very happy in Palmeiras, a very popular club. So hopefully he puts the fans by his side really fast, and he can start fighting for a spot in the national team. I think this is one of the players that we haven't seen yet 100% under Alfaro, and I want to see him back to his best shape, because that's not the player that I saw last year in Nottingham Forest. I don't think we saw the best Ramon Sosa yet. Hopefully in Palmeiras we see that very exciting player that we got accustomed to.
Yeah, I think the Club World Cup, what it showed us was really the level of Brazilian football compared to the rest of South America, but also how close it really is to Europe I think we imagined the gulf was much bigger. And so originally when this move was happening, I was like, oh, he's leaving Europe, he's leaving the Premier League for Brazil. But then having looked at that Club World Cup, I thought, well, actually, if you're going to go back to South America, Brazil is different. It's not the same as going, say, if he went back to Talleres or somewhere like that. So I think he's going to still be playing at a very high level. It's great he plays with Gustavo Gomez, and we continue some of these Albiroja, associations with at club level. And also to Fede's point that he gets more minutes, and because Palmeiras play, all the Brazilian teams play a lot of games, so you're sure he'll get more game time, and that's going to be so important because I think we need Ramón Sosa to be available to come straight into games if it's necessary. We don't know what's going to happen with injuries between now and the World Cup. Maybe he ends up becoming a key player. What happens to Miguel Almiron? He's a bit older, so there's so many things there that I think him having a lot of minutes, which he's going to get from now right through to the next World Cup, is going to be so important for the national team. And I think it's a good move overall.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I'm going to wait and see. I think that's the sort of assessment I will get. Like, I feel like if he does kill it at Palmeiras, then great. That's going to be good for him. And obviously, he wants to keep that sort of return for the national team, obviously with these games coming up and then friendlies and whatnot. So I think, like we had spoken about, usually these players making these moves, they have to come at the right time and they have to be the best moves possible. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what he does at this Palmeiras side. And if he kicks it off very well, then it's going to be good for us and good for him and good for a lot of people as well. One player that did also make a move, and I think this one is very much I don't want to say weird, but sort of like what's going on? Why did this happen? That's Alex Arce. Alex Arce had left Liga de Quito and he's gone back to the club that he starred at, that got him that move to Liga de Quito, to Independiente Rivadavia. So I think, Fede, this is a weird one because, he had been linked to the moves to even as big as the Premier League, to even Palmeiras, to big moves, but he's gone back to Argentina. So I don't know what had been going on back at Liga de Quito. He had been scoring a lot of goals over there. He'd been done so well. He hasn't been this consistent that he was last year right now. So, this is a weird one. And my fear as well is that maybe this kind of move, especially with, again, a position that is always highly coveted with like being a striker and being a forward on the national team. I just fear that maybe this could also mean that he misses his ticket to the World Cup. I don't know. That's a worst case scenario, but it's a weird move, don't you think?
Yeah, I totally thought that his next move was going to be to maybe the Brazilian League, maybe the MLS, maybe, one of those places that they can pay a player like him because, the top scorers, people that score in pretty much every game, those are the ones that get the big bags, and I thought eventually he was going to have one of those big transfers, one last big signing before, trying to come back to Paraguay eventually because we're always hearing that he wants to play for Cerro Porteño where he started out. So I think eventually he's going to come back to the local league, but as of right now he's thinking about the World Cup, and I think his agent had a lot to do with the decisions. I don't think they found the right offer for him. I don't think they found the right place where he was going to be a starter and where he was going to be that star that he wants to be, and his agent thinks that he can be. So yeah, Independiente came with the right money, and they want him back because he's obviously an idol there for their fans, and they want him over there. But this is not the move that I was particularly waiting. I think there's a family issue also there. I believe him and his wife just had a baby also, so they kind of want to take it easy for a while, and they kind of wanted to be close to the family also. I think that had some to do with the decision of going back to Argentina, which is a place they've been to before. Argentina looks a lot more stable now, from the money side of it. We're seeing those kind of signings, Leandro Paredes in Boca, where we're seeing how much River is also investing. We're seeing a lot of teams putting in a lot of dollars now. So I think they can pay those salaries. I think that was also probably one of the issues there. When you're thinking about am I gonna go back? There's enough money there, so okay, we'll make the decision. I think there was a lot of those things going into consideration, and for him to go back to Independiente Rivadavia, I think this is going to be his last move. I think he's going to stay there for a couple of years, after the World Cup, he might come back to Paraguay. I don't see him making a leap now to a bigger league. I mean, this was his opportunity, and I feel like they kind of lost it.
Yeah, I think football is so much like that. Those opportunities, we talked about it, those moments, and because of the way the transfer window works, you have to take your chance within like a couple of months. And it really was probably the last transfer window when he was at his hottest, and then he got injured. Since he got back from injury, he hasn't scored as much. He's never really been able to at national level do what he was doing at club level. So all of those things combined meant maybe the money Liga de Quito hoped they would cash in for him, they realized they're not going to get. He realized I'm maybe not going to get the big move I was hoping for, let's say 6 months ago, and so this is how it's ended up. I do think it's a real shame because I would have loved to see him, let's say, for example, in MLS. I think he could have been a very interesting player there. And to be in the place where the World Cup is going to happen and be in all those stadiums, that would have given him a huge advantage, right? Ahead of Alfaro's when he's thinking about his final squad. But instead, I mean, Rivadavia, you can get a bit lost, I would say, in terms of you're not going to be the headline because you're not at River Boca, you're not at one of the big teams. So it is a shame, but let's see what he can do. If he starts scoring goals, then that's the most important thing. If he comes back and is still scoring goals, because everybody remembers what he's done, not just that in the Ecuadorian League, it was in Libertadores Sudamericana, it was at international competitions. They know he has the quality, and so that's going to be the most important. Just get back to scoring goals, which he did, by the way, at Rivadavia so well. That's what got him the move in the first place.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the expectation that he kind of really returns those same numbers that got him that move to Liga de Quito. And again, I agree with Fede. I don't think that there will be any big move after this. I think he'll kind of settle down because he's 30. So at the same time, you kind of feel like, okay, he makes his move and then maybe a couple of years he goes back to, which I think whoever gets him in the local league would be a big signing. Um, going back to Paraguay. So I think that's going to be the interesting part to see what happens there to him. And yeah, a lot of these players too. You have the young, you have the ones in the prime, and you have some that are about to escape that prime. So yeah, going to be interesting to see what happens to them heading into the rest of the year. Obviously, we have one more thing to talk about. We have the Copa Femenina, Copa America Femenina beginning very soon in this weekend, actually, with the tournament happening in Ecuador, Paraguay in the group with Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, and Bolivia. They already have traveled to the country and preparing. I mean, we had talked about this before, but it does feel like a big test for them, Ralph, that they can go out of this to get out of this group. We obviously have two powerhouses in Brazil and Colombia, and then you have that sort of fifth place game, which it's going to be interesting to see how they do. But ultimately, I think they can hope to qualify for perhaps the Pan Am Games if they have that position to go into, but I don't know if they'll have enough to qualify for the Olympics. I think it's just going to be too much of an ask.
Yeah, I think we talked about it before. It's quite a young squad, so that I think we'll see some experiments in there and just trying to mix things up. And we know that this is no longer the World Cup qualifiers. This used to double up as a World Cup qualifiers. It's not. So we might even see other teams as well are using this as a bit of a kind of sounding board for some of their players. One thing I am pleased about, which the last time we spoke about this, both Lise Chamorro and Jessica Martinez didn't have a club. They've now both signed for the same club in Spain, so they're going to be playing together here at the tournament and in Spain, which I think is very good news that they've got their futures settled for after the tournament, so they can really focus now in what we're going to see. And yeah, let's have a look out for some of the younger players, particularly. I'd love to see if Claudia Martinez gets a run out right after she did so well in the U17s to have the chance at senior level. That could be very exciting to see how she matches up. She's already done it in the local league here in Paraguay. She has no problem, so we'll be seeing that. But I think, like you say, it's maybe less results and more performance and just seeing some kind of things that Fukumoto decides to experiment with.
I think there's enough players here for people to want to watch our national team because there's really a lot of quality there. We're seeing very good young players coming. and making it really fast to the national team. Claudia is one of them. We talked about her several times this year because she's really got us excited, and I want to see them together in this tournament. I want to see them develop, evolve as players, and I think that's going to be the biggest part in this Copa America. But I want to put the pressure on them also because, lately they've been making it to the latter stages in most tournaments. So we were so close to the World Cup last time around. So I want to make it to the World Cup. I want to put pressure on these girls. I don't want them just to go out there and represent the country, have fun. I really want them to start feeling that pressure of we need to make something out of this situation. We need this generation to give us an achievement and to finally to give us that first World Cup. And I kind of feel that this is the process to do that. That's why they brought Fukumoto. That's why they brought an international coach to take that leap, to take that next step. So I'm going to put the pressure on this team. I'm hoping that at least we make it in the top 3 teams in this Copa America.
It's going to be very interesting if they can do that. And then, yeah, it would be a statement, especially heading into those qualifiers that do happen very soon as well. So, yeah, obviously, best of luck to them. And we'll be obviously rooting our way as we always do here on Guarani Vision as we close out another great episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.